In my first read through of Bleach, I'm currently in the middle of a very important rescue mission, and it has been crazy. There have already been so many incredible encounters as Ichigo and his friends launch themselves into the Soul Society, doing everything they can to save their captive friend Rukia. To put it lightly, the Soul Society arc has been phenomenal, and one of the reasons that it's so good is that the events that led up to it were handled perfectly. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. Let's rewind a little bit and go back to the point in time when the fuse to all of this insanity was initially lit. Obviously, the first major moment in the story of Bleach was when Rukia gave her Soul Reaper powers to Ichigo, and as we learned, that was kind of a really big no-no, like punishable by death type of mistake. That pivotal decision that Rukia made launched the initial substitute arc, giving Ichigo the power to defend people from the Hollows and to take on responsibilities for Soul Reaper. But as it turns out, there were much bigger consequences to that than was initially revealed. It wasn't just the launching point for the first arc of the story, but was actually a much bigger clue toward a much grander second storyline down the road, one that was slowly built up over the course of the first 50 chapters. We hear a little bit about the Soul Society early on, and then we get a little bit more about them when we learn about the Quincy, but it isn't some time until we actually get a real proper introduction to other Soul Reapers, not including that one guy that the anime just decided to throw into the fight with the Grand Fisher for some random reason and didn't really amount to anything. The greater and more expansive world of Bleach and the concept of the Soul Society became much less vague when we meet two individuals, Renji and Byakuya. They come to the living world looking for Rukia and intend to bring her back to the mysterious Soul Society to punish her for giving her powers to a mortal. They're the perfect duo to point us in the new direction that the story's taking. I'm a really big fan of mysterious, powerful duos showing up in these kinds of stories, acting as harbingers of new threats and new obstacles, especially when it opens up more avenues to explore. Think Itachi and Kisame, or even Vegeta and Nappa, or even the Toguro brothers. There's an advantage to having characters show up in pairs, an inherent defined relationship to explore, or two different people that can show different sides of a coin or two sides of an argument. Renji takes the lead, being the much more boisterous and outgoing of the two. In some ways, he seems more hostile and threatening, but when we meet Byakuya, you can't help but feel there's a quiet menace to him when they confront Rukia and interrogate her. Still, Renji takes center stage, beating down Iryu and then facing Ichigo. He's wild and dangerous, and immediately displays the threat that the newcomers pose to our characters. Renji's biggest contribution to this part of the story is giving Ichigo a rival, and a chance to test everything he's learned in the story up until this point. He's fought all kinds of Hollows, but he's not prepared to face a fellow Soul Reaper, at least it doesn't seem like it at first. Another concept introduced during the fight with Renji is the idea of a Soul Reaper's sword, their Zanpakuto, being able to transform into a true state and give the wielder even more power. In Renji's case, his sword turns into like a cool saw-looking blade and can be used like a whip to devastating effect. To unseal that power of the Zanpakuto though, you have to know the sword's name. It has to speak and reveal itself to its wielder, something that Ichigo has never even remotely experienced, much to Renji's amusement. Still, it's another huge piece of information organically brought into the story at a time when Ichigo might soon be in need of a serious power boost. Renji's a great foil to Ichigo, since in a lot of ways they are very similar, brash and headstrong, willing to dive headfirst into a fight. But one of my favorite tropes in shonen is the idea of the greater threat being the one that is on the sidelines, spectating. Subconsciously, readers know that Renji's the lesser threat because his partner is still back there and has yet to show what he can do. It's a classic storytelling technique. Let the more brash one take charge and seem like an impossibly powerful obstacle for our hero to overcome, only for the one that has remained on the sidelines prove to be the much more dangerous enemy. Byakuya is just an observer, and through him we're seeing that Ichigo may be more powerful than they realize. Renji doesn't even notice at first because he's too caught up in the fight, and even doesn't believe Byakuya when he tries to warn him. It's a moment to see the real power of Ichigo to give us hope that he may be able to win, and for a second it seems like he could, only to have it immediately stripped away. When Byakuya intervenes, it catches both Ichigo and the reader off guard. There's no warning sign, no build-up. For us and for Ichigo, it just happens, before we even know it did. He's suddenly there, and Ichigo's blade, the signature weapon of the series so far, is instantaneously broken, and Byakuya effortlessly holds the blade's tip, like it was nothing at all. Ichigo can't do anything, having already been defeated. It's one of my favorite moments so far, honestly, and both the manga and the anime portrayed its sudden effortlessness so effectively. Byakuya instantly beats Ichigo without even trying, showing us that no matter how much Ichigo has grown, he still has a lot to learn before he can even hope to face an enemy like that. Byakuya himself has been quiet and calm throughout the whole encounter, but what you do learn about him doesn't paint him in the best light. Where Renji's emotional, Byakuya is pragmatic. Where Renji's loud and aggressive, Byakuya is calm and composed. There's an air of superiority about him, but the most interesting thing we learn about him is his connection to Rukia, where he's seemingly her brother, and I'm very excited to learn more about that. Outside of the new enemies that made quite an entrance, the most heart-wrenching thing about this part of the story is Rukia herself. She's a character that's been there since the very first page of Bleach. The one that launched the story, the one that has guided Ichigo through all of his trials so far. It's hard to see a character like that, someone that we have grown to really care about, suddenly be put in such a hopeless situation. Even when she's resigned to her fate, knowing that she'll be imprisoned and executed, she still does everything she can to save Ichigo's life. She spent the first 50 chapters figuring out how to live as a human, and shows that she has at least learned some things about the most selfless parts of humanity. Seeing her courage even in those final moments in the living world before she's taken back is inspiring, and shows us exactly what kind of human Rukia Kuchiki has become since giving up her otherworldly power in chapter 1. And it makes us want to save her just as much as Ichigo does. And for Ichigo, this is his lowest point in the story so far. No matter how capable he was against all of those hollows up until this point, we see that he's not ready for this new challenge. He's beaten, broken, and will have to pick himself back up if he hopes to save Rukia. With new foes firmly established, a character we love being ripped away from us to a mysterious land, and our hero on the verge of death, we're primed for an incredible new part of the story. That's what makes these chapters so good, and such a perfect overture to something so much bigger. We really couldn't have asked for a more effective transition from our simple hollow hunting days to the challenges that await in the Soul Society. But Ichigo might need a couple of days of training before he's ready for that. As you guys can probably tell by this point, my Bleach discussions as I read through the series and watch the series aren't going to be broken down so much between arcs, like arc retrospectives or anything like that. I really just want to focus in on key parts of the story that I really love. But I hope you guys enjoy as we head towards the craziness that I'm currently in the middle of in the Soul Society. Thanks for watching. Please comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.